But at the end of the day, where economies seem to get, what's happening in China is the economics of the project have to work. I mean, I can't tell you how many times in my office at the Silicon, on the Sand Hill Road was, I got this idea about selling dog food on the internet. It's 1999. It's brilliant. Well, I've done I've done the matrix, and I figure there's 1 billion dogs out there, $10 a bag. I get 10% of the market. Well, I got Morgan Stanley on the phone. Let's get this thing funded. And without maybe be a little hyperbolic there, but at the end of the day, the clean tech is a bit de rigueur. And I agree with Natalie is that there was people that were doing this stealthily for 20 years or 15 years. I don't think you were 14 when you started. That's quite nice. But at the end of the day, it's been going on, and now it's kind of de rigueur with the social conscience we now have. And so it tends to be, it'll go where the money is. And when Morgan Stanley gets together with Deloitte Touche and Kleiner Perkins and a couple of dodgy law firms in the Valley, you can take any company public and really do well by it. But was the fundamental premise of what that company was designed to do really economically sound? Well, I think we saw what happened. So I'm just a believer after watching that car accident that, really sometimes don't get drawn into this sort of ephemeral discussion about money and matching funds and all this stuff. That's to start to look at whether the technology itself makes sense and when would a predictable return on investment ever be achievable. And certainly that's what the the VenCap funds need are definitely focused on.
Right now we're seeing a lot of work being done around wastewater reuse rather than just water treatment. It used to be there was a big focus on water treatment for drinking water, but now it's wastewater. We're seeing a lot of focus, especially with the oil and gas industry. And we're also seeing a lot of packaged kind of water treatment systems coming out, particularly since the government has infused some money into the First Nations. That's kind of encouraged people to start doing packaged water treatment and wastewater treatment for the First Nations. Soil and groundwater remediation. There's been a lot of attention on groundwater, and there's a good reason for that right now, because with all of our surface water now fully sort of licensed, people are starting to turn and look at our groundwater resources and saying, what do we have there? And so there's been a lot of focus around groundwater, and what we see is the universities are spending a lot of time researching how much groundwater do we have, whereas the industry is looking at more how can we remediate it. So like they're trying to build technologies for remediating groundwater, and they're trying to look at how do we utilize it better and that type of thing. So some of the areas that we're seeing.
We talked a little bit about economic development. The fact that you're generating power in the Pincher Creek area, has that attracted any businesses or anything like that, or is that a potential, is that a possibility?
Well, it does, because as soon as you have some infrastructure in an area that requires to maybe be maintained over time, there's a lot of services that go with it. So, when you build a wind turbine, this is a large piece of equipment. So this is on an 80-meter tower. The rotor is 90 meters in diameter. You need cranes to be able to, get up and get equipment in and out of it. There's all kinds of service firms that you're going to use from the area for, materials and supplies that you need for maintenance and ongoing. So it does attract, a fair number of other businesses other than the people that are directly involved with the site. So.
And that has resulted in development, like residential, that kind of thing, obviously.
I think it has somewhat, as I indicated in Pincher Creek. It's if you go back 10 years, there was a relatively modest amount of wind industry in that area, and now 10 years later, there's, I think the number is actually 58 people that are directly involved as employees of the wind industry in the Pincher Creek area. So, that alone and all the spin-offs that come from that is, I think there's a lot of economic development that comes.
To be able to, I guess, provide alternatives in the information and the price signals, there's lots of different things that need to come together to be able to influence that decision as to where they decide to buy that house. I think it's different than whether you're turning your lights off or not. I mean, it is a different type of decision. But just in the example of the houses, I mean, we also need to provide viable alternatives for people. And if they want to live in Tuscany because of the lifestyle, there's no reason you can't have a similar lifestyle or even a better lifestyle in a more compact, transit-oriented community. But I don't see many of them here in Calgary.
No.
And so we need to be providing some of that infrastructure to provide people with the choices. So lots of different components into how people make their decisions and why they make them. There's lots of different things that we need to do to try to influence those decisions. So
But
not just prices.
One of the things that you raised is, you know, fundamentally we are an affluent society, and that should give us more options, not less. And that becomes, again, a shift in mindset, because the perception should be, I don't necessarily live in a small, more densely populated community because that's the only thing I can afford, or that's the only thing that's available to me. I do it because I have other values that also feed into that. And I think that's the thing is that really a more affluent society, fundamentally we should be sitting in a situation where we have more options, not less. And the question is, if we don't have those alternatives readily available, why is it that we don't have those alternatives readily available? Is it because there's concern about I'm not going to be the first developer, I want to be the second developer who builds the community that is more transit friendly? In the downtown core, you know, is it that? Is it a perception? Is it pricing? You know, it's all of those things. And things need to change on many fronts in order to be able to make those kinds of shifts. But that should create the opportunity for us rather than limit them.
I think there's a good example here in Calgary, is there not, that I keep hearing about, is the Garrison Green. Is it
Garrison Woods?
Garrison Woods.
Yep.
And maybe you guys here can elaborate a little bit more upon the success of that. But my understanding is that they had intended to have sort of mixed income, and so, but what happened is that it was so much, and it's so much in demand that even the smaller units that they anticipated would be cheap have tended to be outpriced for the people they had intended them for, because people's values are shifting, and how much time they want to spend on a McMansion and the cleaning and the yard and the driving are shifting. So
great example of a community, though, that when you see the success of Garrison Woods, you'd think that it would be replicated, and maybe it is being, but I haven't seen one yet. I'm an inner city girl, so for me, thinking about going to some of these places, so I'll go to visit a friend in Douglasdale or somewhere. Oh my God, they don't even have sidewalks. There's not even any sidewalks. There's nothing to encourage you to get out of your car aside from getting in and out of your garage, right? Whereas Garrison Woods has the sidewalks, they kept the trees, they have shopping really close, you can actually walk to everything. Why would you not replicate something that's proven? Because it is, it's lovely.
Yeah, one of the challenges with doing developments like that is typically you're in an existing part of the city, not building on the edges, and it probably takes you a couple more years to get all the approvals in place to be able to do that. And so, it depends on if we're thinking about technologies, a neighborhood design is a technology, and there's a specific barriers associated with that, and there's specific barriers associated with other things, and that's why it's quite complex, and you got to break down each of those barriers almost on a case-by-case basis, and it's a wonder we innovate at all when we've got so many barriers established to doing that. But we do tend to overcome them over time, and so it's about continuing to work on each of those barriers.
It's one of our, we call Generation 5, it's a system. Actually, it's 2x3 foot. It can sit in the corner of your kitchen, basically next to your kitchen table. And believe it or not, a system like that will provide a family with a round year supply of green vegetables. And you don't have to use fertilizers, and you don't use pesticides there. It's a healthy food. What we found that the productivity of the system is so phenomenal that if you compare with, say, that field production, it will be probably 30, 40 times higher, maybe.
Which would be, how will local foods meet the needs of capital once it crests, let's say, the $100 million mark? And what I want to know here is, if you look at the succession of any industry over time, it goes from research and development to this little cutesy-wincy phase, and then capital finds out, and then it actually goes on to meet the needs of society. So if we're to look at local food right now, it's still kind of cute. Let's say that if we were just to look at this local food discussion, not the crops that also happen to be used in Canada, like Hellmann's mayonnaise using grains from Canada, just kind of happen that way, good for them. I mean actually this local focus. Let's say